Dan. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I'm saying us, but it's actually just me. You're a famous YouTuber, and I'm really fortunate to have this conversation with you.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here doing this conversation. I wouldn't say I'm a famous YouTuber. I feel like I don't know. Then again, I do have a profile on famousbirthdays.com, so maybe I am famous.
Oh, do you? Okay, so I can Google you and you'll be on the calendar.
Yeah, famousbirthdays.com, that's me.
Okay, amazing. Well, you do have 164,000 people following your YouTube channel, so in my eyes, that's pretty famous. The most important thing for me is that you're also on the autism spectrum. So I wanted to chat about that and just how you deal with people messaging and commenting, and also maybe some negative feedback, obviously the positive feedback, but being on the spectrum and managing that.
Yeah, sure. So it's quite interesting. It's taken a turn, like a trip. So I went from like one place to another place. When I first initially started, you get very little communication and you build up that interaction with those people. So initially it was kind of manageable. I like to respond to as many people as I can, pretty much everybody I can. But at the same time, I also like to have time to do the things that I want to do in my life rather than just spend all my time messaging people. But it got to a point where I just get overwhelmed with messages. I get thousands and thousands of messages a day, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, how do I even manage all this? And so it got to a point where I freaked out and didn't do anything. And then I was like, okay, I must have a better system. So I basically have a system where either an hour in the morning or an hour in the evening, I'll spend that hour going on different social media platforms, replying to people, and especially replying to emails. And I found out that I can actually pretty much talk to everybody by doing that, which is kind of cool. So that worked, but it wasn't easy to figure that out. I went through this kind of like transition. And you mentioned hate messages, and so you get, out of all the messages, say you get 10 messages in a day, like one message, maybe, I don't know, a negative comment, but you don't really see it because you've got all this other stuff. I think some negative comments do get to me because I take things quite literal. And so when I get a negative comment, and this is obviously an issue where I'm not entirely sure when people are joking or not, unless I have really good rapport with that person. It's hard to understand their humor and stuff. In terms of, getting negative feedback and them saying things like, I don't know, let's say nasty things like, this person looks like he's a faker, or, this person's, say nasty things that you don't have ADHD, and stuff that's really nasty and horrible. And then you take it really seriously, like, oh my God, yeah, what are they saying, And then you realize that these people are just people who are have serious issues in their life. And then you think, and then you kind of almost have this oh, I feel really sorry for them now. Maybe they have some issues going on in their life that they need help with. So what I did is I changed the narrative from, stuff all the haters to love all the haters. And then I make it a point of giving haters, if I come across them, I don't make special time. If I do come across haters, I just say to them, hey, that's okay. You can feel like that. That's fine. And I hope that if you've got anything going on in your life that needs help, you get the help you need. And also, if I can help in any way, just let me know, that's fine. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get people saying, oh, I was just having a bad day. And it's interesting how many haters are not really haters, they're just people having a bad day. But you get the people who just how dare you patronize me? And it's like, oh God. So it's socially exhausting, but the difference is when I'm face to face with people in an actual environment, it's very exhausting, because when you're in an actual environment with people, you almost share energy. I don't know a better way to say this, but they're second energy from you, you're taking energy from them. This is what happens in social communication. But in terms of when you're talking on social media, bear with me just a moment.
That's not for you.
It's not for me. I live in a really sketchy area now. I live right on the beach. So all the holiday tourists and stuff come, it's just constant flows of traffic. I have a brunch place down here. There's a burger bar, an ice cream place. paddle borders everywhere. It's just crazy. Anyway.
But I think what you're saying is very important, because I think a lot of people are dealing with, and even youngsters are dealing with bullying. And it might be cyberbullying, or it might be bullying at school. And to take from it where you're saying, okay, it is somebody that's coming from having issues themselves, and it might be completely different issues, but to have that idea is quite important, and it helps you to manage it better, I think.
Definitely. And like, people don't, like, when you put yourself out on the internet, you're not putting your entire self out there. You're not filming 24/7 of your life. And so people always think they always think incorrectly this myth that if you put yourself on the internet, you open yourself up to exposure and people can say things about you and ridicule you. But what they do is they're ridiculing like this tiny percentage that you put online, which is like not even, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what your life is. So they don't really know you. So how can you take offense to something that isn't even about you?
I think it's also important for youngsters that are on social media to know where to draw the line, what to share and what not to share, because I know that we work with some pre-teens, and sometimes it's difficult to note what to tell them, what is okay to share, which kind of photos are okay, what kind of information is okay to share. So I think it would be good if they can even watch your videos and say, okay, what is he sharing, and then what is it?
It's a really good point, because I have a lot of parents when I do like keynote talks, a lot of parents ask me this question. And so, I would say for the teens and tweens, and anybody really, putting anything online that could have personal data in it, like your name, your address, something personal about you, where you go to school, or whatever, those things are really dangerous, for anybody, no matter what age you are. But for the teens and tweens, a lot of it can be dangerous because, you might put pictures of yourself online that, or images or videos of yourself online that, people could like repurpose and reuse in places that you probably don't want them to be used. And so of make fun of you, cyberbullying, all kinds of stuff. So what I would say is stick to the topics of the things that you're interested in most talking about. Don't just talk about your life, because your life probably isn't that interesting to other people, and that's hard to break that bubble for people. But lives aren't really that interesting. But what is interesting is somebody's obsession with Pokemon or Minecraft or Magic the Gathering or whatever. You know what I mean? So those things.
And your obsession with Pokemon, which I know about.
I do. I just got my son into loving Pokemon as well. He loves it.
Really? Does he love it, or are you kind of pushing that into?
No. To be fair with myself, I didn't show him. My partner, Naomi, showed him the Pokemon, and now he's all over it. I'm like, yeah. Like we've got the Apple TV channel for like Pokemon. I'm just like, let's go.
And is he allowed to touch the special Pokemon cards or not yet?
Not even Naomi saw touch the Pokemon cards. You insane. No, it's not. They're with my passport and my COVID passport and stuff like that. And just nothing goes with that.
So the most important things.
Yeah, they're locked away. No, jeez, it's not going anywhere else. But yeah,
I think one of the other things is for me to just know what kind of benefits do you have being an advocate and quite out there in social media. So what are the benefits? Is it something? Can you spread a lot of awareness and acceptance and just understanding of autism and ADHD and maybe dyslexia?
Well, it's a two-way street, really. Like when I first started putting content out, I wanted to put content out to help other people, because I was hitting roadblocks trying to find content that was relative to me, right? And so there was nothing. So before I was on the scene doing YouTube videos and Facebook videos and Instagram videos on autism, there was nobody doing it. It's kind of cool. Like I was like the first person. So but what happened from that is that the benefit is the benefit of spreading awareness is helping raise the tone level of people's understanding from being something which is quite a negative understanding to a positive understanding, more of a detailed understanding, because you're able to talk from your experience and life experience as a person living that day in, day out, and then they get to see it. And then they get to relate to it as well. So not just the parents who go, oh, my kid is just like this. That's a really good, cool point or tip. But the people who are watching it are like, hey, this guy's just like me. I'm going to send a message and say he's a cool guy. And then I get a message from this really, awesome person. And I'm like, hey, you're awesome too. And so for me, the benefit is I've been able to expand my, group of people that I can communicate with and really kind of build rapport with that have the same issues that I do. And so I went from being like quite a secluded person, socially, to having this large community of people that I can kind of correspond with and communicate with on a daily basis. And this leads on to another thing, is that what my content changed to create a benefit for people, where I realized that, if you're an autistic person, typically you're going to be quite isolated. You're going to be a person who plays computer games. You're going to be in your home all the time. You're not going to have a huge social life. I've only ever been to a nightclub once in my life. But you know what I mean? And I was there for about half an hour and I left. It was horrible. But like those, how are autistic people supposed to find, and have these social things? So I wanted to create a community where we could build that social interaction and bring other people to have that same experience I had, where it's opened up my world. You know what I mean? And so by inviting people into my community, it opens their world as well, which is just like, that's mind blowing. Like I literally, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and also to show that community it's a cool community to be part of, because I think a lot of the stigmas out there is saying that because my kid is obsessed or fixated, I don't like the word obsessed, but fixated on a certain interest, they just have interest, that they're going to be isolated or they're going to be kind of shunned by society. But I think it's a false belief, because there are so many other people that are really interested in that item. Maybe it is Pokemon or it is an online game. So I think just knowing that there are more people out there and being an advocate for that makes it very different for not just the parents, but more so the person on the spectrum.
100%. Because like a lot of parents, basically have like this, like you said, that false belief that like obsessions are bad. But I think like obsessions are really good, or fixations are really good, because like there's markets for every single niche going. I mean, you can, like, there's some weird stuff. Like I watch a video of a guy who goes around the UK with a table and chairs, like a pop-up table and chairs, and tries like kebabs from like street vendors. It's like, you know what I mean? I watched a guy as a young kid in the UK that tries chicken wings in every restaurant in the UK. It's like it's just weird stuff. But like people are really into that, and like, so no matter what the obsession is, there's always an audience for that obsession. So you're going to find friends in that field, and this is one of the key takeaways when I teach people about like making friends and creating friendships. It's finding rapport through common ground. And how do you find common ground? Is finding people with similar interests, and then they're typically going to think similar to you, right?
Yes, and that's the easiest way to make friends. I mean, for any person, is you find somebody with similar interests. And that's very similar to, I had a conversation with Dr. Temple Grandin, and she also said, find interests that the kid likes and then push them towards those activities, because it just, you're going to find similar-minded people. And then the bullying is going to decrease, because it's going to be people similar to your child or to you. Yeah, I think
exactly.
If you could say anything to a younger version of yourself, to make it easier for yourself when you were younger, what would that be?
I think I would validate my feelings. My parents never validated my feelings, So like I was scared of leaving the house. I remember a specific instance where my babysitter, my mum and dad worked, and so I was with a babysitter in her house. Carolyn, her name was. She's a lovely woman. I still see her now around town and stuff, and I still get that kind of like warm, kind of like, oh, Carolyn, can I come and have dinner in your house? But like, and then so she used to look after me, and she had a young daughter as well, who's similar age. So we used to play together. Well, I'd say play together. I used to stare at Lego, and her daughter used to like throw things at me. But and then I remember one time she was like, "Oh, do you want to go to the shop and get some sweets?" And she gave her daughter money to buy sweets, and I just couldn't. I'd never been outside on my own, so I was like, like freaking out, like proper freaking out. And then her mum was like, no, it's okay, don't worry, Dan, you can stay here, it's fine. And so that instance, I'd love to go after myself and be like, that's absolutely fine to feel like that, like, and like, let's talk about it. What does it feel like? Validate that. Identify what it is, validate it, and then say, that's cool, man. We're all different. It takes all kinds of people. Just like saying, you wouldn't, someone in a wheelchair was faced with steps. You wouldn't be like, oh well, you can't go up the steps. You'd be like, okay, well, you're a wheelchair user. Let's find a different way around it. Like you'd validate it. You wouldn't just kind of brush over it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so bizarre. So that's what I would do.
Okay, I think that's a very good point. Validating anyone's emotions and feelings is extremely important for long-term positive effects as well. I do think that advocacy and the awareness and the understanding wasn't there maybe 20 years ago. I'm not going to give away your age, but you know, now it definitely is there. So whatever your child is feeling, to validate those feelings and to bring awareness to it and say, okay, how are we going to make it easier for you? Maybe it is too loud for you, or maybe you can wear some noise cancelling headphones. Maybe you can go out with some sensory toys. I mean, we all have these now. Lately, we all have our little fiddle toys around. So now it's more seen in public, and I think parents are also dealing with it better. But just to validate those emotions is very important, and find coping skills.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think the coping skills will come from, like, when you validate something, when you really take on board, well, that's what it is, then you'll be able to say, okay, well, what can I do to, you know what I mean? If you don't validate anything, you never really stop looking at it. So how on earth are you going to find something to compensate it or to overcome it? You know, you just kind of like, oh, well, we'll deal with it again, and, you know, cross that bridge when you come to it, kind of thing, rather than actually dealing with the situation at hand.
Yeah, to be proactive as well, to understand that there might be some sensory issues. And I think sensory is a big thing, and people are more focused on that now, which is great. But the sensory input from different environments, I think we've had a glimpse of it through COVID era. So we now know that it is different to be isolated than in social situations. And when we go back, it's super loud and there are people all over. I mean, I'm getting sensory overloaded as well. So now I think we understand it a little bit better, that autistic people are going through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And any other advice which you would be able to give to parents with a younger child?
It's to really get down to their level. A lot of parents don't pair with their kid. You know, they feel strange because their kid is operating on this level, doing that thing, and their parents are up here. So parents are always trying to get to the kid to come to their level because they feel like their level is normal, right? So what I'd say a lot of parents should do is like, you know, if your kid's, you know, lining up cars on the carpet, then get down there and start lining up cars, man. You know what I mean? It's like that, building rapport like that is called pairing. When you start pairing with somebody, you gain that person's trust. So just like, for example, I did a consultation with a doctor, and she was a therapist, an autism therapist, and she works with autism, you know, clients, and she normally kind of goes around and has like face-to-face meetings with them. But then COVID hit, and she was doing all these meetings via Zoom, right? And all of the meetings were on Zoom, and the kids were just not having a good time. Now, they wouldn't talk to her, they wouldn't do much. They were just like, oh, yeah, that's weird. So I said to her, okay, I'm guaranteed those kids play Minecraft. She said, yeah. So I said, download Minecraft, get on their server, put your headset on, play with them, and talk to them. Well, she said it's the best thing that ever happened. She said that she had the most engagement with them ever by playing Minecraft with them because they were able to talk to her. Because what happens is they were busy. Their need for occupation of something to do, you know what I mean, of their focus was taken care of. So that the analytical part of their brain, which was subject to objective conversation, it was free and able to interact because they weren't being taken away from the part of their brain which needed to wonder, right? And it was already wondering, but it was focused wondering. Yes. So it was really interesting. So that kind of changed the whole life, whole practice. I should have charged a lot more money for that.
and that goes back to also just sharing their interest and showing interest in what they're interested in, and not pulling them away and using it as a reinforcer. I've got a big problem with that, where some therapists would say, okay, yeah, but we are bringing in their interest, but we're giving them like 5 minutes of reinforcement time with it after they've done all these boring tasks. I'm like, I don't think I would want to do that. I would also become behavioral. If somebody takes away something that I truly love and then say, oh, you can have 5 seconds with it quickly, and then I'm taking it away again. So rather, let's teach them through their interest. I think that's very important. So you are a little bit older now, and you're obviously in a relationship because you mentioned that, and you've got a child of your own. Do you have any advice for anyone that is dating somebody on the spectrum?
There's loads. I mean, the basis of everything is a force of communication. Yeah. So autism impacts the ability for one to communicate in certain aspects of social environments and constructs, which is kind of like, is this person, like, so say for instance, I'm on the spectrum, my girlfriend isn't on the spectrum. I could have said something because I have no filter when I say things, I might talk about BDSM, or I might talk about kind of like, crazy stuff that'll just create, just crazy stuff that comes out, and that somebody will find it kind of quite off the wall maybe, and then may take offense to that. So if my girlfriend takes offense to something that I'm not aware of because I didn't realize there was, because there's no filter there, how do I know that she's upset? Well, typically somebody would know by facial expressions, behavior of body language, and other types of tone and tonality and mood within the communicative patterns of that person. But with autism, that's not there, unless it's like a direct indication. I'm feeling sad. This upset me. Sort it out, love. It's not going to happen. So what we do is we've had many a time, how do we have a successful relationship? Well, everything that should be worth having has to be hard work. You know what I mean? If it's worth having, it should be hard work, because you know what I mean? When you climb up mountains to get to the top, no one says, "God, that was easy." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when the gold medalist Olympians they finish whatever they're doing, they never go walk in the park. They're just like, they're knackered. And it's good because it shows that the effort was put in there, and that's what you get out. So in order to do that, one of the things, a lot of people walk away from relationships when they become hard, especially when communication barriers present themselves as such. And so the one thing I would say is that, okay, perseverance through difficult times will come to succession, but then also learning from it. So we set up a communication pattern where I said, look, if there's something wrong, don't just assume I'm going to know, because I'm never going to know. You know what I mean? Just like I have to write a birthday in my calendar, and things like, and I have a cheat sheet of things like flowers, chocolates, balloons, whatever. Those things will help someone, and so that's like a cheat sheet. It might come natural to other people, but it's not that easy to remember those things, because again, my focus, my wandering mind is focusing on other things that are completely bizarre. We could have, and so with that, she tells me when things are issues, and also she'll tell me when I may be wondering. So like, we'll be having a conversation about something. Like she'll tell me like, hey, so today I found these shoes I was thinking about buying for our son, and they're in sale and blah blah blah. And I'm like, Naomi, did you ever realize that the time-dependent Schrodinger equation really reminds me of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle? She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but we're not talking about it now, we're talking about shoes. This actually happened the other day. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. So it's kind of her not being like, are you listening to me? It's her being like, hey, Dan, I'll tell you what, that's a really interesting concept. We'll talk about it in a minute. Can we just talk about this at hand and bring it back? Kind of like, it's a wandering mind all the time. So it's knowing that if you're dealing with somebody on the spectrum, it's knowing the parts that are autism based and what are personality based, because everyone can be a bit of an idiot, right? I've done stupid things that had nothing to do with my condition, and I've got grumpy at things, and we argue about things, but it's not all the condition. But there are certain things like communication is one of the biggest ones, and things like that, and I feel like autistic people don't intentionally try to forget things. You know what I mean?
This is one of the points that I wanted to bring up. The first thing, definitely communication. But then the second thing is to trust the intention of the person. So if you were wondering, because I get this in my own life, and if you were wondering, for example, and you said something completely different to what Naomi was saying, it's not that you weren't listening. That's exactly
and it's not. Yeah, of course, and it's not that it wasn't important what she was saying.
It wasn't. Yes, exactly.
Right?
It was just your mind was going.
Exactly. I have to say that thing at that moment in time, because if I don't, then it's going to go, and it's very important I say that. And so sometimes I'll get up, I'll stand up in bed in the middle of the night, and I'll have to type something down, or have to go and write something down. And another thing is that I have random outbursts of things where we'll be talking about something, and then I'll be like, oh, what was that thing that reminds me of this? And then I'll go on for a week, and I can't remember the thing that's reminding you. And then I'll remember the thing that reminds me, and I'll burst out. I'll be like, potato salad, that was it. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the thing we talked about a couple of months ago. And she's like, what are you talking about? And the other thing, she's like, she kind of embraces that. And another thing is touch. So before I talk about touch, something really funny is that, if I hear a joke, I have delayed response to jokes. So maybe I don't know, 6 or 7 months later, I'll laugh about something. So I'm sit here just hilariously laughing about something I heard months and months ago. I did it this morning actually, and I don't know what it is. I think it takes that time to process what was going on, because there's so many things going on.
But she's embracing this. This is awesome.
Yeah. But one of the funny things about touch, about relationships is touch, because all relationships have intimacy, right? So the be all and end all to life is sex, obviously. That's how we exist. We are spiritual and sexual beings. That's how we exist, and everything has sex. So in order for sentiment and being intimate with people, touch is obviously something that has to happen. Physical touch is something that happens. But with like, I can't have light touch. Like, light touch makes me want to like punch myself in the face. Like, I can't do it. It makes me jump. So like, if we're driving the car, it just like touches my leg, just like kind of like a a nice thing, like touch you like like a jump, like like it's something. So she's learned like, okay, maybe I can touch. She's like, she can't like gently touch my body. I have to like have very like strong kind of like
deep pressure.
And because those other ones are kind of really difficult to understand, and also there has to be very like forward confronting. It can't be like come from behind and just want to squeeze her head. Oh my god, like I'll be like I did be on the floor,
And that is super important for our youngsters again, because some of them really enjoy the light touch and others really enjoy the deep pressure. It really is. It's
a preference, yeah.
Yes.
It's hyper or hyposensitive, right? So
exactly.
You can be under or over. Yeah.
Yes, and for them to react aversively to some form of input, then we need to assess, okay, what kind of other input do we need to give them to calm their system again? So it's very important to learn your child's sensory profile. And that goes on up until you're an adult. So, I mean, it doesn't change.
No. One thing that could happen is that you could I don't know, practice does make progress, never makes perfect. You can never fix anything like that neurologically, but you could kind of like get more used to wearing like tags on clothing, right? I don't have tags on most of my clothing, but some of the clothing I do have, I've cut it off. But certain things like trousers, I can have tags on the back of my trousers, and that's okay because I've kind of progressed to know that feeling is that yes, it's nice when I have trousers with no tags on, but it's not. I'm not. It's not debilitating if I have a tag on my trousers, but it would be if I had a tag on my t-shirts. I'm like, you know what I mean? So. But
it might also lead up to a delayed response then, because
it could be delayed irritation. Yeah.
Yeah, you can keep it together, and then at one point you just kind of shout or something, perhaps at Naomi, and she'll be like, okay, but I didn't do anything. But it might be accumulation.
100%. One of the another example of that kind of like delayed response is like it's kind of like lining up dominoes, whatever, or like you can only take so much before like I don't know if you ever played that game Buckaroo, you pile things on the donkey and it kicks back at the end of the day once the last thing goes on. And so like one of the biggest things for me was that if I have things in my routine that completely go out of control, like say I'm supposed to get up at 7 or 6 and I'm going to come downstairs with my son for a bit, then we're going to go for a walk, then come home, we're going to have like lunch or whatever, and then if one of those things happens where like I don't know, I have to like somebody phones me, I have to go somewhere and do something, I'm like but on that frustration is pent up, and so it will come out in the bizarre states where like this is a real life example where like that situation happened, and then we were cleaning the living room, like just hoovering around and stuff, and then the carpet was a bit skew-iff, and I was kind of moving the carpet around, and I was like, okay, so I went to then grab the corner of the carpet to push it down. And then Naomi was like, flipped over and just like hit it before I got there. And I was like, and it kind of like, because it was in my control vision, I was trying to control things within that environment because I already had a missed control during that day. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't handle it. And then of course, head hitting and bloody just, becomes a big issue. So it's really important to know, and just for autistic people as well, but anybody who's dealing with autistic people, to know that if someone does have an upset routine, that trying to feed in bits of control within their environment to them during the rest of the day or the duration of the period.
That is, I think that's a very important point, because if you're scared or overwhelmed by a certain item or a certain feeling, for that person to have the control again does make a difference. And I think a lot of times the old way of doing therapies with kids and adults was for the therapist to be in control. And I think if we give back the control for the kids and to the adults that are actually dealing with all of these feelings, right?
Think about this, right? Somebody asked me this as well, like, why is it important to have routines in autism? Like, people are like, why is it important? I'll tell you exactly why it's important. It's very simple. Everything in life is chaos. Like, lights are chaos, sounds are chaos, heat is chaos, the ambient noise is chaos, your clothes are chaos, your body temperature is chaos, the feeling of your feet is chaos, the feeling of your stomach content is chaos. Everything is chaos, and it's completely out of your control. Mm-hmm. You need something to focus on that control. So routine is the only way you can control something, because without it, you will literally go insane. And that's what meltdowns are. They're pre-insanity outbursts. You know what I mean? And I know people who've had psychosis after having a meltdown and going to psychosis because there's nothing they can control, And so that's why routines are important. And it's not that we should break routines. We should embrace other areas of control. And so it's mad. Like the simplest things, like even like, it's just crazy. Even breathing can be triggering. The sound of yourself breathing is so intense. Like people just don't realize all that's going on here.
Yeah, and I also think with routines, to stick with the routines, because even though a child or an adult might know what the routine is or what the schedule is for the day, a parent or a therapist might feel, okay, well, he knows what it is, so we're just going to take it away. And I think that removal of it is way more traumatic than just keeping it there. I don't see a problem. I don't see it as a problem having we all have schedules. I mean, I've got an online schedule, and I would feel quite anxiety provoking if that was taken away from me.
Yeah, it's kind of like if someone said to half of the mums and dads, like, when you get up in the morning, we're going to take away your coffee machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal with it. They're like, just that's it. Coffee machine's gone. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how many people? Yeah. It's crazy.
I think the strategies definitely coping skills and strategies need to stay. And then in terms of employment, if you've obviously found something that you love and that you're passionate about, and you're helping a lot of people, thousands and thousands of parents, and autistic people as well. But for somebody that's young and they might not have as many interests yet, what would you say is the most important thing for a parent to focus on in terms of thinking of employment later? Because parents that we work with always think of their kids 10 years from now, 20 years from now, which is understandable.
Well, the first thing I say to parents, I get this question a lot when I'm doing like live talks and stuff. And so the first thing I say to people is that, like, okay, let's go back 20 years from now. Are the job roles, or the things that you do in your job and the skills you have in your job now relevant as they were 20 years ago? Probably not. You go back 20 years, the internet was like 24, 26 came out, 56 came out then, maybe. I mean, now you've got broadband, your social media. There was no such thing as a social media manager 20 years ago, you know what I mean? So, are the jobs relevant? No. Why are you thinking so far ahead? What you should do is think about, can my kid actively cope with environments of help with commands? Like, someone says, can you do this? Yes, I can. Can they keep themselves safe? Can they articulate themselves in a way which presents them as who they are and the skills that they can present? Yes. Are they physically able to carry out a task? Yes. Those are the things that will take you through to getting a job. Are you a decent person? Are you honest? Are you on time? Are you punctual? Those are the things that you get in your job. And how do you get those things? Because parenting, nurturing, understanding, learning, those things are what helps you get a job. Now, typically, the jobs that people on the spectrum would go for, I mean, there's no real kind of like marker that I would say that people would more resonate towards than anything else, right? More attention to detail jobs seem to be ones that they'll enjoy more. I remember one of my most favourite jobs was I was an ESR processing administrator for NHS Trust, which is our National Health Service. And what I did is I used to transfer, I was a financial reconciliation officer, so I used to reconcile the financial reports, like millions and millions of pounds. I loved it. And every trust, rather than having their name, like the Great British Royal Kings or whatever, it was all like 152, 685, 858. They all had numbers, so everything was a number. I loved it. Dealing with numbers all day was great because I was comfortable with that. So there are more favourable options. So if your kid's into maths, cool. Why don't you put them into mathematics college and then get a degree in maths? Then they could do stuff with computers. If your kid's into gaming, then why don't you invest more time in gaming and understanding the complexities of gaming and creating gaming, and maybe they could be a games tester. I know a guy called Sean who runs a YouTube channel called Jacksepticeye, and he's like a millionaire, and he plays games for a living, and so there's no limit to the creativity that your interest could create for you, not with the abundance of opportunity that surrounds you today. What the parents need to do is stop being so narrow-minded that if you don't work in a factory or an office or a retail, that your life is over, because it's the most bizarre thing in the world. Being a YouTuber was never a job 10 years ago, but it is now. You know what I mean?
Also, I don't think a lot of people would have thought, even if it was a job 10 years ago, I don't think they would have said, oh, okay, that's a perfect, ideal job for an autistic person, because they would say, no, it's too much attention on them, but it works for you.
It's funny, it works for me because I control it. Like, I'm here in my own environment. I've made this environment cozy, comfy. I can do as much or as little of it as I want. I am able to edit my own videos. I'm in complete control over this. And I can say what I want. It's a way of expressing creativity, which is awesome, because autistic people want to create, they want to create all the time. And creativity is more important than recreation for me, And so creativity draws me to it, control draws me to it. And just the idea of seeing something that you've done to, built to go to succession is such an overwhelming kind of awesome experience. That is why I enjoy it so much. Talking to the camera was interesting. Somebody asked me this question today on my Instagram. They said, "Oh, this guy is difficult with eye contact. We can talk to a camera." And I was like, "Okay, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out." But luckily, I am a rocket scientist, so I can explain it to you. You can. When you're face to face, so you look in somebody's eyes, that's a very different experience. It's almost like a spiritual connection when you look at somebody's eyes. When you're talking to a camera, actually, in actual fact, I had a huge issue talking to a camera when I first did YouTube. If you look at my first ever YouTube video, I'm like, I'm not even looking at the camera. It's terrible. After about 50 to 60 videos, you kind of get comfortable looking at the lens, and you realize that the lens is just a lens. It's not somebody's eye. It's somebody looking into your soul. There's nobody on the other side. It's this, dead analog kind of thing that you're looking at, and it's fine. And so that kind of, again, practice made progress. The more I did it, the better it became. But when I realized that talking in front of a camera was almost like performing music with my band, because I'm a band as well, so I play music. This kind of gave me this idea that, you can have an on-screen persona, which is different to you when you're at home, not saying a word because you're exhausted, and just looking at alien documentaries, which I do pretty much every day. So, that's how it works.
Yeah, I think that also gives you a little bit of comfort, because you've got this persona online, and then you can be completely yourself with your family. And it's nice because it makes it creates it into a job. That's a job. And then when the cameras are off, then you can just relax.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's great. Parents usually are worried about the future, but I think just speaking with you and looking at a lot of your videos, I think they can learn that there are so many things that they can do now with their kids to help them prepare for a successful future. And that might look different from yours, it might look different from any other child, but it can be an independent, as much as possible, future where they find a career that they love, and they find who they truly are, and they're proud of themselves. I think that was a big thing that I took from what you said, being proud.
Yeah, another thing is, it's kind of like, it's good to be cautious of the future, to prepare yourself for things, because being prepared is great, but worrying about the future when it hasn't even happened yet is kind of like double worry, because you worry about something that you're going to probably worry about when it happens, so you worry it twice. There's no reason, right? So just be cautious about it, prepare for it, and when that time comes for transitioning into employment fields, then attack it with that kind of like, okay, now it's time to go, let's apply for these jobs. And then you realize that worry becomes superfluous, and then it'll just be something that you don't even use,
And also preparing for relationships, that just takes, like you said, I like that saying, practice makes progress, because the more they practice now with friendships and getting their kids out to their interest-based activities so that they can make friends that are really their friends. And then they build those friendships and they just practice. And that could lead into later on to, long-term friendships and also relationships later.
Yeah, 100%. And something that I think parents should always realize is that, like, if I try and use this metaphor for a second, like, so say your kid is here, right? Practice is this, right? It's continual progress. perfect, which is where your continual progress is always trying to reach. It'll never reach perfect, because if it did reach perfect, which way can perfect go?
Yeah, it's down.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like you got practice makes progress, continual progress. If you can never reach a state of perfect, because you only need to climb. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't try and think, oh, my kid has to be perfect at this. No, just as long as they're making progress, they're headed in the right direction, because that's all we're doing. We're always moving forward. You know what I mean? You don't want to stop and start moving backwards, do you?
Making progress and being happy and feeling accepted.
Oh,
I think those are the
everything comes down to happiness. If you're not happy, what's the point? You know, I think there was a very famous Zen Buddhist called Alan Watts, and he said, you know, I'd rather a short life filled with happiness than a long life filled with misery, because that's all you're after. You know, what's the point of being alive if you're not happy? Jesus, you know.
And yeah, I think a lot of the things that you said today, if the parents could follow some of them, then their kids would also show that they're
change their life.
Because, yeah, exactly, and they'll feel respected and they'll feel accepted, which I think I know every child wants that. That's great. Thank you so much, Dan, for speaking to me. And if anyone wants to read your book, this is one of the books that you wrote.
Yes, it is. Become the Force.
Yes, and I'm gonna become part of your force soon. Hopefully, I just need to learn the 9 lessons. But thank you. We'll chat soon.
Thank you. All right.